Alien disclosure, 10 years ago, I feel like this would have been something that a lot of people would have laughed at or dismissed or not talked about. And yet, here we are. We have people in Congress, we have pastors, we have most of the American public, the majority of the American public believing in UFOs and aliens at this point.
Breaking this morning, the Trump administration has begun to release files related to UFOs.
They say the Department of War announced the initial release of new, never-before-seen files on UAPs.
There's a big growing consensus that 2027 is going to be a year filled with all this, like unbelievable disclosure, manifestations of these things. This is the word in the ether, so to speak.
Shalom and welcome to another episode of Zeta Tov. Today I want to talk about the recent UFO findings, the videos and pictures that have been released to the public by the Trump administration. There's a lot of this going around on all social media platforms. A lot of pundits and commentators are giving their take on what they believe it is, what this could lead to. A lot of really good Bible teachers have been given their take on this as well. This really started with a supposed meeting from pastors that was called by supposed government officials. Now, there's some controversy and some debate on whether some of these pastors were credible or not. My attempt on this video is not so much to expose them or to see if they were credible or not credible. It's more on what was said and what the implications are today. Supposedly, this meeting of these pastors was called by government officials. Now, the level of their clearance in the government or within the government, that's questionable as well. But in either case, they were told that they needed to get the church ready for what the world or what the United States or our nation is about to unveil. Specifically, speaking about the findings that they say show that we were seeded supposedly by aliens of another planet, that the Bible is a good book, but it's not true, and the God of the Bible is not the ultimate authority or the ultimate truth in the universe. Now, as we know who hold to the biblical worldview, we know this to be false. But why is this information being given to us now? I guess that's the big question, because there's always been rumors of these UFOs and aliens and so on and so forth for many years. It's nothing new. But why is this supposed disclosure in this great amount, this great quantity of information that will be coming out? Why is it happening now? Now, we're also being told that this is just the first wave of information that will be unleashed to the public. It'll be revealed in stages throughout this year, culminating in the year 2027. But why now? What's the significance of this year or the time that we are living in now? Why is this being released this year? This administration that's in office now has been in power in the past. They've held this presidency in the past. Why wasn't it revealed then? Why now? And that's what I want to discuss today. We can start with one of the most repeated prophecies in the entirety of Scripture. The prophecy that's repeated most above all other prophecies would probably surprise most people. It's not the coming of the Messiah, although it relates to that, but it's not specifically pointing to that. The most repeated prophecy throughout the entire Bible, which is really spoken about by, I would say, the vast majority of the prophets, if not all of the prophets, is the restoration of the land of Israel. That is throughout the entire scriptures. You go from Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah, you just go down the line, and it culminates with the regathering or the Geulah, the redemption of Israel. If you go to the library and you get a book, you get a nonfiction book or you get a fictional book, it's a story. And you have a beginning, you have a middle, you have a development of the story, you have characters that are developed, You have plot twists and so on and so forth. And then it culminates with the end of the story. The Bible has an end to the story, and it ends with the restoration of Israel. That's the whole point of the entire scriptures, is the restoration of Israel. The Messiah plays a key role because that's the sign that the event that triggers this or seals this restoration of Israel, the promised land that God has given to his people. And this is so important. And one of the things that God says throughout the scriptures is that the nations will know that he is Adonai. The nations will know that he is God. They will know his name. And that phrase is intimately tied to the prophecy that I just mentioned, the prophecy of the restoration of Israel. You can even go as far, if we want to dissect it even further, the two houses, the house of Yehuda, the house of Judah, and the house of Ephraim, the house of Israel. The restoration of the two sticks of Ezekiel 37 coming together. That prophecy, over and over and over, repeated in the scriptures, tied with the fact that God says, when this happens, the nations will know that I am Adonai, that I am God. And we see this in Ezekiel chapter 38. And I want to read that to you. Ezekiel 38 and 39 are dealing with the battle of Gog and Magog. And this battle of Gog and Magog, and I don't want to go into this, the purpose of this teaching is not to go into the specifics of that, but just so you know the context, that battle takes place right before the coming of the Messiah, right before the end of this age, when Yeshua comes and rules from Israel, which will be his kingdom, and he will rule for 1,000 years. Okay, right when that happens, prior to that is when this war that takes place in Ezekiel 38 and Ezekiel 39. I would encourage you to go read that. But in Ezekiel 38, verse 23, it says, I will show my greatness and holiness, making myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am Adonai. Very important. So the things that are happening right now with the culmination of people going back, the Jewish people going back to their land, the land being contested, which we're going to go into that a little bit later in this video, is extremely important, because the story of the Bible tells us when these things finally take place at the end of the age, at the Acharit Hayamim, then the nations will know that I am God. They will know that I am Adonai. We're going to come back to that a little bit later in the video, but I want to continue on. What else is happening this year? Earlier this year, Trump from the White House read a passage to the nation. Got live on camera, or I know at least it was recorded. It's out there. You can go watch it. He read 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Now, this passage is not an obscure passage. It's a passage that many leaders read. But this year was the first time a sitting president read the passage that included verses 11 through verses 22. And I want to read a little bit here for you so you can understand why this is significant. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 11. Thus Shlomo, or Solomon, finished the house of Adonai and the royal palace. Everything that Solomon had set his heart on making in the house of Adonai and in his own palace, he accomplished successfully. Trump read this from the White House. Now, typically, leaders read beginning in verse 14. And you're going to recognize this because it's read quite often. Verse 14 says, "Then if my people who bear my name will humble themselves, pray, seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land." That particular part of the passage is read quite often. You see that in on picture frames and on posters and so on and so forth. But Trump decided to read from verse 11, which very clearly speaks of Solomon building the temple. He's building the temple. And in context, this passage, Solomon just finished the house of God. He just finished the temple, building it for Adonai when he got the order from God to build him a house of worship. And then God says to him, "Solomon, I have heard your prayer." This is in verse 12, "and have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice. If I shut up the sky so that there is no rain, or if I order locusts to devour the land, or if I send an epidemic of sickness among my people, then," this is where the passage that's always read comes in, "then if my people who bear my name will humble themselves, pray, seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land." So God is saying, you have built me this house for me, for my glory, for my spirit, for my Ruach HaKodesh, a place of offering so you can come close to me. But in the future, if my people stray, if they go away, and I will bring judgment upon them. I will bring sickness and devour their land with locusts. But if they turn from their ways, if they humble themselves, if they seek my face, then I will hear from heaven and forgive their sin. I want you to remember that term, forgive their sin, because it's going to be very important in the next point that I speak about. But this is the passage that Trump spoke and read live from the White House, from the Oval Office. So I think it's very significant. I don't think it's by accident. I don't want to be too sensationalized on these things, but I believe he read it for a reason, especially with the things that are going on in the Middle East and the contention of not only the land of Israel, but the Temple Mount. But that's for another study. The next point I wanted to bring up is, and this also has to do with the Trump administration. Our nation is celebrating the 250th year of independence this year. And Trump made a proclamation that I wanted to read a portion of it. The White House had released a proclamation that they wanted to invoke in our nation. And it reads, "In special honor of 250 glorious years of American independence, and on the weekend of Rededicate 250, a national jubilee," remember that word, jubilee, "of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving, Jewish Americans are encouraged to observe a national Sabbath. From sundown on May 15th to nightfall on May 16th, friends, families, and communities of all backgrounds may come together in gratitude for our great nation. This day will recognize the sacred Jewish tradition of setting aside time for rest, reflection, and gratitude to the Almighty." It goes on to say, towards the end of the proclamation, "I further call on all Americans." See, before he was focusing in on Jewish Americans, but here at the end, he says, "I further call on all Americans to celebrate their faith and freedom throughout this year, during this month, and especially on Shabbat, to celebrate our 250th year." Now, what is the significance of this? Well, to know what this means, you have to understand what a jubilee, which Trump is calling here, is. In Leviticus 25, the year of Jubilee is, or really the time period of Jubilee, he had commanded his people to work the land for 6 years. the farming of the land, the crops, the planting of the planting, and then the gathering of the harvest for 6 years. Then on the 7th year, they were to let the land rest. They were to repeat that 7 times. 7 times 7 is 49. So it's a block of 49 years, if you will. Then on the 50th year, the Bible calls this a year of Jubilee, which is the same verbiage that Trump used for this particular Shabbat that he wants everybody to commemorate. That year is a year of Jubilee. That year, all debts were released. All slaves were released. Everything was forgiven and returned back to their proper owner. And that was a time of celebration. Trumpets were blown. And after that year, the cycle started all over again. The year of Jubilee, the block of Jubilee began again. So Trump is calling all Americans on May 15th to observe a national day of Shabbat. Again, Shabbat is the 7th day of the week, or in this block of 50 years, it's the 7th year of that week. So why is this significant? Because this points to a future Shabbat. It points to a future time when the Messiah is going to come and set a time of Jubilee. Yeshua quotes Isaiah when he goes into the synagogue and he picks up the Isaiah scroll. If you recall this, I believe it's in the book of Luke. And he quotes Isaiah and he tells the synagogue, the people that are there, and he says that this is the year of release, when the captives are set free. And the verbiage there that he's using is a year of release, a year of Jubilee. He goes on to say in the Gospels that without the shedding of blood, that there is no forgiveness. The word forgiveness that's used there in the Greek, in the New Testament, when Yeshua says this, is aphesis. And that word aphesis is a Greek medical term, which means to, as if, for example, if you had cancer and the outcome of the cancer was going to be death, there was no cure for it, unless the cancer goes into remission. And that's what the word aphesis means. It means to remit. It means remission, release, to let go. And that is in medical terms, that is the only chance you have to escape death. And that's the word that Yeshua is using when he says the forgiveness or the aphesis or the remittance, the remission of sin. Okay, that same word is what Trump is using in the proclamation. A national day of Jubilee, of forgiveness. Again, if you go back to what he read in 2 Chronicles, we just read this, that the temple that Solomon had built was for him, for his glory, for his Ruach HaKodesh, for people to be able to come close to him through their offerings. But then he said that if my people stray away, I would bring judgment upon them. I would bring locusts to devour the land. I would bring sickness upon them. But if they turn from their evil ways, if they come back to me, Shuvah, if they repent and come back to me, then I will forgive their sins. Again, that word forgive is tied with Jubilee. As a matter of fact, the Hebrew word is Yovel, which is, ironically enough, Yovel is the trumpet, the shofar blast that they use to ring in the 50th year. These things are tied together spiritually. And if you don't see it through the scriptures, if you don't go into the Bible and see these things and study them for yourselves, now I'm giving you this information, but I pray and I hope that you go back and you look into these things yourself to ensure of what is going on and the things that we're seeing take place in this world. All I'm doing is sharing what I have found with you. And I hope you get I hope that it is a blessing to you and that you're finding some substance to this. But I want to continue on. So he reads from 2 Chronicles chapter 7. He establishes a national day of Jubilee, and it's tied to the 250th year of America's independence. Now, this is another very significant thing that takes place on a particular date. So the Independence Day of the United States, as we all know, is July 4th, 1776. If you look at the Jewish calendar, on July 4th, 1776 was the 17th day of the fourth month, or the 17th day of Tammuz, the month of Tammuz. Now, 5 very important things happened on that particular day. The first thing is that Moses broke the tablets when he saw the Jewish people worshiping the golden calf. During the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem, the Jews were forced to cease the offerings, the daily offerings, due to the lack of flock, the lack of sheep, because of the siege that they were being embarked upon. The third is Apostamos burned the Holy Torah. Now, there's some debate on who this figure is, Apostamos, but the important thing is that the holy scrolls, the holy texts that the Jewish people held on to, were burned, and that kind of set a precedence for the future for people that wanted to sack or desecrate the temple to burn the holy text or the Torah scrolls. Number 4, an idol was placed in the holy temple. And then number 5, the walls of Jerusalem were breached by Romans in 69 CE after a lengthy siege. 3 weeks later, after the Jews put up a valiant struggle, the Romans destroyed the second holy temple on the 9th of Av. The Jerusalem Talmud maintains that this is also the date when the Babylonians breached the walls of Jerusalem on their way to destroying the first temple. So this is an iconic day, if you will, for lack of a better term, that took place on Independence Day. And it's, if you want to use the word ironic, I don't know if that's the right word, but is it ironic that Trump in the United States, the Trump administration, is choosing on this year, the 250th year from July 4th, from the independence of the United States of America, to establish a national day of Jubilee. Again, Jubilee, National Day of Forgiveness. So is this a way for God to be using our administration to try to reach his people to do Shuvah, to return, repent, and come back to God? Is Trump chosen by God? Is he anointed by God? I don't believe so. I don't believe he's anointed by God. I believe he's being used by God, because if you really look at it, our nation is one of the very last nations to support the people of Israel. Where there's really not a whole lot of other nations that is doing as much as the United States is. And right now, as it stands, I think the last polls that I saw, 61% of American adults have an unfavorable view of Israel, particularly with this war that's going on in Gaza and Iran, with the disputed land in Gaza with Hamas and all this. But the American support for Israel right now is at an all-time low. I tried to do some research on it, and I couldn't find any time where it was as low as it's ever been across the globe, across the world. Nation upon nation upon nation has been siding with Hamas, with quote-unquote Palestinians, with Iran, and have come against the United States. Now, that is saying the other nations, and I just mentioned 61% of American adults are leaning that way as well. What is triggering this? Many of our leaders, politically, in the social media realm, in just the media realm as well, have completely shifted their focus from being pro-Israel to anti-Israel. Why are these things happening? Why such a big shift in their ideological view, theological view, you really could say? Because for many hundreds of years, we have always supported Israel because this has always been a Judeo-Christian nation founded upon Judeo-Christian values. But now in 2026, we have chosen as a nation to turn our backs, to stop our support of Israel in her greatest time of need. And you're hearing all these. I'm not going to go into the very specifics as to why they are saying these things. We need to stay focused on the Bible and what it says. And the most repeated prophecies I stated earlier is the restoration of this land of Israel to establish the kingdom of Messiah. Friends, if this doesn't happen, if the land of Israel does not get redeemed and restored, then Messiah is not coming back. If Messiah doesn't come back, then we don't have a kingdom. If we don't have a kingdom, we don't have a king. If we don't have a king, we have no resurrection. Our resurrection is intimately tied to Israel. Yes, Yeshua is the one that was raised from the dead. Yes, he was raised on the third day, and by his name we are saved. Yes, all those things are true, but you can't throw out his kingdom as well. None of those things will come to pass unless Israel is restored. And that is the reason why things are heating up so much in the Middle East and why people are being turned against Israel, because the enemy knows what's at stake. The enemy knows what is at the end of the Bible. The enemy knows that the culmination of all things is God's people coming back together. Yehuda and Ephraim, Judah and Israel, the house of Israel, being reunited, the two sticks of Ezekiel 37 coming together back in that land. Now let's finish this up with what we started this with. This whole discussion of UFOs and aliens and us being seeded by aliens from another planet. Are these real? I'm going to tell you right now, this is what we would call the spiritual realm. And we always talk about the physical things in the Bible, the temple, the land, the people, all these things. But we don't spend a whole lot of time talking about the spirituality of all these things because they coincide together. The physical is happening at the same time the spiritual is happening. It says in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, Daniel's getting a prophecy, and then an angel comes to him in chapter 10. Daniel 10, verse 20. Then he said, this is the angel Gabriel, "Do you know why I came to you? Although now I must return to fight the prince of Persia, which is modern day Iran. And when I leave, the prince of Greece will come. Nevertheless, I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. There is no one standing with me against them except Michael, your prince." So these are angels. These are spirits. This battle is taking place in the spiritual realm, the unseen realm that we cannot comprehend, we cannot see with our own eyes. But these things are taking place in the spiritual realm. You have Gabriel, you have Michael, you have these legions of angels battling. Who does it say? The prince of Persia, the prince of Iran, which is a prophecy that's very clearly laid out in the book of Daniel with the ram and these things that are happening in the Middle East, and the prince of Greece. Again, all these things taking place from a Middle Eastern perspective. The word for prince in the Hebrew there is sar, which means leader, ruler, official, or governor. So these spiritual entities are taking the form, or maybe even inhabiting, these leaders. So when you see these wars that are going on, wars or rumors of wars that are going on, and these leaders that are initiating these conflicts, you have to see that it's not just a physical thing. These leaders that are in place are actually SARS, or they're actually entities, spiritual entities that are ruling these nations. And what are these nations that are being ruled by these spirits? What are they doing? Coming against Israel. Why are they coming against Israel? Because they know that that's the culmination of all things. That's the restoration of the land of Israel, which in turn leads to the restoration of your body and my body in the resurrection, when we live in the kingdom with our Messiah, Yeshua. And that's what I believe is going on here. I believe these so-called aliens, that we're going to see some more things that are going to come out, but you have to be steadfast. You have to be in the Word of God. You have to know what's going on, not just from the physical standpoint, but from the spiritual standpoint as well. Friends, I hope this helped you. I hope this was a blessing to you. I hope you got some value out of this information. But again, I would encourage you, highly encourage you, to go back and study this for yourselves. Don't take my word for it. I expect you to go back and look at these verses, go back and look at the historical standpoint of all these things, and make sure that what I am saying is accurate. And please, I would love to hear your comments down below. And if you would, please share this video with as many people as possible. Like this video, and please consider subscribing to this channel so you can be updated with more content that I will be bringing in the future. Until next time, shalom.